I am the Space Quest historian. Here's a little addendum to my Ways That Space Quest 2 Could Dig You Over video about how to cheese the kissy alien on Vohal's asteroid. And you may be wondering, well, why didn't you just put that in the same video? Well, one thing I've learned from doing YouTube this long is that most audiences prefer when videos focus on a single topic. In fact, if you start burying little nuggets like skips and glitches in videos that are ostensibly about something else, like, for instance, how I had this whole bit about the audio glitched version of King's Quest V in my retrospective video on that game—
Cedric, please, no!
Then people tend to forget about it later down the line, and I end up having to reiterate it over and over again whenever it gets brought up. So yeah, it's like, yeah, I did a video on that actually. Oh, really? Where? Oh, it was like buried 45 minutes into this retrospective video about something completely different. Oh yeah, I remember that. You're a dumbass. Well, thank you. I'm well aware of that. Yes. Anyway, here's a video detailing how you can skip this whole parade around the asteroid bit at the end of Space Quest 2, and how you can actually finish the game even if you've been handed the kiss of death by the somewhat legally distinct alien xenomorph on the lower levels. And I suppose now would be a great time to provide a brief bit of context for people who have no idea what the fuck I just said, but trust me, I'll keep it short. You're on an asteroid fortress. You're running around picking up shit, that's not important to this video, and avoiding dangerous floor scrubbers so you can reach the inner sanctum of the main baddie and pull the plug on him. When you do, and you stop the launch of his nefarious plan, the whole fortress starts spinning wildly out of control for some reason, and you have a short time to make it to an escape pod before you're dead. But while you're exploring the asteroid looking for these items, which again are not important to the story, you might come across this cage that slowly opens to reveal— yeah, it's the alien. And it's not like an alien, it's like the alien. Like Ellen Ripley's off in the wing somewhere shitting her knickers kind of alien. It's the only difference between this one and its movie counterpart is that when it catches up to you, it plants a big fat smooch on you and then runs off. And the game just continues on as normal. But all is not normal, of course, because since this is a Sierra game, and an early Sierra game at that, you would be fully within your right to assume that you are now absolutely fucked. And your assumption would be absolutely correct. Because later in the game, just as you're about to jet off in the aforementioned escape pod, you hatch an adorable little baby alien in a predictably violent fashion, and the little tyke runs off to celebrate its own birthday until it will inevitably croak in just under 6 minutes, give or take, like everything else on the fortress. But anyway, over the years, I've heard people say that they've managed to reach the escape pod while still being a proud, expecting parent, and I've always written them off because I thought they were just trying to pull my leg. But when revisiting this sequence for this video and the Space Quest 2 Dick Moves video, I got to thinking, is it really possible? So I had the lovely weirdos on my SQH Discord go on a little hard hat expedition to find out just what goes on behind the scenes. Because I was under the assumption that if you get smooched by the alien, you would hatch its newborn bundle of joy somewhere on this screen. Why? Yeah, I'm not actually sure. I thought maybe it was because the timer that triggered said hatching just happened to run out at pretty much the exact same time every time I played the game, or, more likely, that it was hard-coded in to trigger on this screen specifically. But it actually isn't, and I'll explain in a minute. But first, some context. While you're in the final stretch of the game, you suddenly find yourself being chased by this lovely fellow, another edge case of copyright infringement dubbed the Vohal Meromatic. He's blocking your route to the escape pods, and he immediately gives chase upon spotting you, so what you're meant to do is turn on your heels and bolt in the opposite direction. Go all the way around the asteroid, which is circular, so it just loops back on itself, and then go back into the tunnel from the other side, giving you just enough time to get to an escape pod and blast off. And of course, every time I reach this screen, which is just when you're re-entering the tunnels after doing your involuntary victory lap, the alien bebe would hatch. At least that's how it always panned out for me. But let's put on our hard hats once again and delve into the game's code to find out exactly what is happening. When you get caught by the alien and given the smooch of death, the game sets a timer using two variables. Now, remember, decompiling scripts for classic Sierra games is kind of still a bit of a guessing game since the variables all get renamed to these fairly useless numeric values. I know, Sluicebox has figured out a way to decompile scripts and keep the variable names intact, but my Discord denizens likes to keep shit old school, I guess, for some reason. Anyway, let's just call them variable A and variable B. Variable A is set to 6, and variable B is set to 180, and these two variables control the timer that ticks down until you become a proud parent. How fast they count down actually depends on what the in-game speed setting is set to. So, Phil Bennett on my Discord worked out the math. If you're playing on the slowest speed setting, the timer runs out after 214.8 seconds, which translates to 3 minutes and 34 seconds. If you're playing on the regular game speed, or normal speed as it's called, it's a bit faster, 174.4 seconds, or 1 minute and 47 seconds to be exact. If you're playing on the fast speed setting, we start getting into some nail-biting territory because now you only have 53.7 seconds before unavoidable death ensues. And if you're playing on the fastest speed setting, then all bets are off, because unlike the other 3 speed settings, this one just runs as fast as your computer will allow. So if you're playing on a modern machine in DOSBox, then more than likely it's just a complete blink and you'll miss it type situation. But here's the kicker. This timer only counts down on these screens in the game. These are the hallways you have to run through in order to avoid the Maromatic during your final gauntlet. Anywhere else in the game, the timer is paused and doesn't decrement. And that means the alien embryo will only hatch on these screens because these are the only screens where the timer can possibly reach 0.
Everybody got that? Good!
And not only that, you'll notice that one of the hallway screens is exempt from the timer, and that's the screen that actually contains the escape pods where you first run into this mechanized little shit. And for some reason, this screen is a safe zone. But, and this is where shit gets a little bit weirder, apparently it's only safe due to a programming oversight, because there is in fact a flag that gets checked on the screen to see if you got kissied by the mama alien, and our best guess is that this was supposed to be some sort of failsafe check so that the alien baby would hatch on this screen regardless of whether the aforementioned timer had run out or not. But we can't say for sure because, for whatever reason, the logic that performs this check only checks to see whether or not it should load the necessary graphics for the chest-bursting animation, and what it doesn't do is actually trigger the goddamn animation itself, so whoops, I guess. That means the only thing that will actually trigger the chest bursting is if the aforementioned timer has run out on one of the previous screens, and this is where the weird shitometer spikes completely. If you can somehow make it to the escape pod screen before the timer reaches 0, you can finish the game while still carrying the alien embryo. It's true. I checked it out for myself. People were right all along. I was wrong. You guys were right. You can absolutely fucking do this. Now, if you're playing the game normally, getting to the escape pods the long way around is usually more than enough time for the timer to reach 0. So I think the alien's kiss of death was intended to be a full-on unwinnable state, and, as such, worthy of inclusion in my Ways to Dig You Over series. But instead of running around the whole asteroid fortress like a chump, it turns out you can actually just about make it into an escape pod while the Maromatic is chasing you. And it does take some nimble maneuvering, and you have to be fairly fast on the keyboard to type in the necessary commands, but if you set the game speed to slow just before entering the screen, you have just barely enough time to get to the escape pod that's closest to you, type press button to open the hatch, and then type climb in to enter the escape pod. And if you do this, there's actually a message saying that the Maromatic sort of tips his hat at you and bids you adieu because, yay, you somehow found a way to cheese this stupid puzzle. And I don't think the designers ever meant for you to be able to cheese this puzzle, but, you know, just in case, they actually threw this message in. So, hey, that's nice. Yeah, I mean, not only does this save on janitor boot leather, you're also more or less guaranteed that the alien baby timer will never run out. So, yeah, that's how you cheese the Space Quest 2 Kissy alien and make off with an alien embryo in your chest that just somehow magically disappears once you clear the asteroid because, like I said, the timer doesn't count down when you're on other screens of the game, and that includes the escape pod screen, so you're somehow safe. I guess maybe the cryogenic tube thing that Roger climbs in at the end of the game just sort of dematerializes the alien or kills it, or I don't fucking know. It's certainly not around in Space Quest 3 when you wake up, so, you know, David Fincher, eat your heart out. This is how you do a happy ending. And yeah, that's really about it. Big thanks to the great SQH Discord denizen Brandon Bloom, Pickle Dog, and Phil Bennett for diving into the code and uncovering the saucy details behind this romantically inclined xenomorph. And thank you so much for watching, and stick around for Space Quest 3, the Dick Move series video thing. I'm good at this. I'm actually a professional. Hooray for me. And also the whole Chrono Stream thing. Bye!